Um, Look, I originally put a lot of effort into my writing. There was often multiple drafts, and I had a private space and the right cultural, geocultural experience, and um, just to barely make those compositions. They're very scientific. Almost all my poetry is based on some scientific development I was doing, and then I found a way to simplify it into a poem, which I'm very proud of. I think they're magical. I did that intentionally. But on a phone, on a tablet, on a touch screen, no, no. I was doing. Mm, let's see, what was it? About 12 years ago, when I first got a phone, I was quite impressed that the radio reception was perfect no matter where I would go. And I think they have just recently changed that back to something else. It's hardly even clear. Um, it's quite ambiguous, but yeah, the original phone that I had in 2012, when you turn on the radio, the reception perfect no matter what. It was just always there. So I would listen to the radio, and I was quite. And then I was still writing everything on paper. That's how you know the history of the world was has always been written on paper. Always. It was never touch screened on some uh, spy device which did not carry. The whole world. Every single school children didn't walk around carrying a spy device, which their inner sort of expressions and desires were all completely known, um, accessible, and traceable, literally to their immediate sort of like, oh, there's that sandwich. Wow, it's right there, and hold on, look. It was written on paper, and this device completely unnecessary beyond about 1 in 10 people at most. That would be amazing. And similar to an automobile that drives, you could imagine 1/10 of the vehicles in the world existing, and them pulling cars that have uh, very low range. You have enough. If a car has 100 horsepower, think of 100 horses. They could pull a wagon trail of a dozen separate cars, uh, each one with a whole family or a group of friends in it, who could be working on projects at all time, including uh, omnipresent security. Because if you do have all your eggs in one basket in a convoy, a road train, which would potentially use like you know a small fraction of the energy and uh, focus our attention to where it's actually needed. So civilization, just us driving around and having phones, um, omnipresent information, and two-way radio, which we're broadcasting everything about our private, personal lives to to the enemy. Actually, yeah, the phones are made in China. Guess what? The all the shit is accessible to them. And I was writing stuff on paper originally, um, and I couldn't even do it in California. I had to travel outside of there before I ever was doing any compositions. I just could not comprehend rationality where I grew up on the Wild West, right next to Silicon Valley and Hollywood, just almost kind of in between. Um, it was only when I traveled and I began to realize, oh my God, I my school grades improved dramatically when I went to a place where the natives looked like me in Europe. Um, and I would have stayed there. I would have grown up there, at least in New York or the East Coast, in the Atlantic realm of cultural identity, or indeed Australia, um, or anywhere other than the most primitive frontier, which is basically California. Australia is primitive, but it's not a cultural dominion. It's just not. It's a very different reality. The southern seasons are, it's a traumatic thing. It was like, you know, the thing about South Africa, it might be nice for a month or two, and that might be it. And if you can secure economies that can, have the right people in the right part of the world, think about the people in Gaza. If they had a safe place in Iran where they could live and, fully um, worship God, um, I would go to that region for a couple of months at least every year, and I would go, rather quick as soon as possible. If Hollywood was going to actually come with me, perhaps, and there was a good neighborhood, people who of the Western persuasion who lived there. Um, okay, maybe a little spice with the girls. It might be fantastic. It really could be. And I would help the Near East, the Holy Land, to have peace. Again, so that if there is some biblical sort of override that manifests destiny, that Europeans would move to the New World or something like that, and it was somehow, oh, this is a good thing. Then you have to sort of look out for civilization, so you don't end up with a ghetto left behind of ghosts and drug, political degeneration. Um, it's basically, yeah. Um, I was watching this thing talking about Hamas and how they're politically affecting and persuading, and Hamas is Iran and Afghanistan and Russia. They're all right there together, pretty much, right? Um, and Russia and Afghanistan, do the math there. Um, and then places like Israel, sending people like Charlie Wilson, if you will, okay, to get it all completely confused. Um, and if you have an interest in some place, there's actually, it's more than one random individual like Charlie Wilson, which I believe that is the evidence. Okay, they made a movie that says that some guy is whacked out on cocaine, um, doing completely stupid stuff. He could have lived there himself. That might have been the solution. Leave Texas and move to Afghanistan. If you're an individual who enjoys that, and that's, I don't know if that was always the opium capital of Central Asia, but I would gladly go to the Persian Gulf region under ideal conditions. Okay, with with some people who are actually happy to see me.